Today is our first attempt to borrow brilliance from an object, and that object is maps. One of the really important component parts of a map that makes them particularly helpful is that they are visual. And actually, when you look at lots of examples of career maps, there's a real lack of visuals. Map number one is an energy map. Every day I would just ask myself, when did I have the most energy today and when did I have the least energy? The give-gain map. You think about the people in your career that you support and who support you.
Skills mapping. There are the skills that you want to stretch and the skills that maybe you want to invest more in. Career possibility mapping. Lots of people get sort of stuck in their career. So we're trying to encourage a little bit of curiosity here and use possibility mapping as a way to do that.
Problem mapping. How could you use a map to sort of make sense of that problem so that you're not just going around in circles, you're actually doing something about it?
Hi, it's Helen from the Squiggly Careers podcast. And before you listen to today's episode, I wanted to let you know about some news that Sarah and I are very excited about. And that is that our new book, Learn Like a Lobster, is now ready to pre-order. We think that learning is so important to people succeeding in their squiggly career, but we recognise that it is not easy to do. And so we wanted to inspire people to look differently at learning, and we think that lobsters are the role model that we have been missing. We really, really appreciate it when people pre-order our book. It means that our book gets momentum and also you get it first. But we know it's a while before that book arrives, and so anyone who pre-orders, we have got a special surprise. The surprise is the Learn Like a Lobster library, and you will become a member of the library when you pre-order the book. In the library, you will find 3 live learning sessions with Sarah and me, one in October, November and December. There's lots of tools for you to try out and there's a community to connect with. So please, please, please pre-order Learn Like a Lobster now. Support Squiggly Careers and support your own career too. If you send your pre-order to hello@learnlikealobster.com, we'll be in touch with everything you need to know to join the library. So pre-order the book, send it to hello@learnlikealobster.com, and we will be in touch with everything else. On to today's episode. Hi, I'm Helen.
And I'm Sarah.
And you're listening to the Squiggly Careers podcast, where every week we borrow a little bit of brilliance and turn that curiosity into action to help our squiggly careers. And on a Thursday, we're going to give you some extra insights to support your development with our Squiggly Career Shortcuts, which are super short, as the name implies, episodes to help you take action. So make sure that you are subscribed to the podcast so that you don't miss out on those. So Sarah is leading the borrowed brilliance today. Sarah, what are we borrowing brilliance from?
So today is our first attempt to borrow brilliance from an object, and that object is maps. And this was actually prompted for me by reading somebody's Substack. So loads of good content on Substack. I'm sure lots of you already read or kind of follow different people's writing. I think what's always nice about Substack is you can tell it's people writing about things that they're often just really passionate about, and people kind of create their own communities around those things like cooking or visualization or whatever it might be. And this is someone I don't know, someone called Jürgen Appello. So I hope, Jürgen, I have pronounced your name correctly. And he wrote a post called I Started Drawing Maps. And I just read it, and it was an interesting sort of reflection on both his career, but also kind of map drawing. So he was
Jürgen though.
I think it popped up on my LinkedIn. Yeah. And I clicked through because I think I saw probably the visual stood out, and I was like, oh, that sounded interesting. I was probably connecting the dots. I do really like a book that I've got from Stanford Design School. I love their series. I've talked about that before. Really short, really visual books called The Secret Language of Maps. So I've looked at that before. I've spent time with that. Saw Jürgen's post, read it. And he has 2 really interesting thoughts. One of them actually is very related to squiggly careers. He talks about, he thought for a while he had to be really, really focused on just doing like one thing really well. And then he talks about this idea now of being more M-shaped. And his thinking, or his sort of provocation is, I want to sort of get good at multiple things because it will open up more possibilities. And also if one of those things becomes more redundant, so AI gets good enough to do that thing, oh, do you know what, I've got a couple of other areas to kind of come back to. So
what's the M? Is the M the spikes?
Yeah, so sort of go deep, like the down bits of the M.
Was the down bit the deep?
I think that's how I've understood
Okay.
it.
I was like,
Like
well,
I
I'm
say,
trying to
that was
visualize
my.
the
He
M.
can maybe he can get in touch with us and be like, oh no.
Yeah.
My understanding was he was saying like, yeah, the down bits of the M are like the things that you've kind of gone into and like
Yeah.
got kind of stretched your strengths in like our words.
Okay.
And the reason he got to maps is his story was that he always liked drawing, but then I think he ended up as like a sort of software engineer or something kind of more technical because he thought there was more jobs in that, and he was probably right. But he's sort of rediscovering that skill because actually, and he proves it in this post, AI is not that good at maps. It's not that good at like, and actually he's played with it and he shows some of them. And he was saying, well, that's quite a useful thing. It's something I've always liked doing, and he's quite intrigued by them.
That's interesting, isn't it? You know, when you're thinking about what can we do better, I guess the ability to do maps is, you know, it's slightly conceptual and you're also creating connections in interesting ways. It's just quite interesting that that's an ability that we have that maybe AI didn't have. I mean, I have to caveat that with yet, but
Yeah, I mean, and he does actually. He puts yet like in brackets loads of time.
yeah.
He's like, well, it can't do that yet, and he's very kind of open to things. But it's just a really interesting read. So then, obviously, I've dived into the world of maps and gone way too far with maps, and I started to kind of connect the dots a little bit with mapping for your career and kind of, is that useful, is that not useful? So if you think about like maps that you use in everyday life, what do you reckon is the map you use the most, Helen, as somebody who I wouldn't say has an amazing sense of direction?
I mean, I have no sense of direction. Do I use any maps? Google Maps.
There. Yeah. The
That's
most used map
probably
in the world, I
okay.
reckon.
Great. I'm following the I'm following the
Yeah.
masses with my maps.
So I think when you read about maps, why people like maps is obviously they give you a sense of control and certainty, and they help you when you don't know. So if you know you're not going to use, some people do use maps, I suppose, in their local area, but you're less likely to use them when you know an area well because you sort of don't need it. But when you're somewhere new and you're kind of not sure, a map helps you with like, well, which direction to go in, how long is it going to take? But I was then going kind of back and forth. I'll be interested to hear what you think about this. Is I was thinking, well, in our squiggly careers, you can't just take a map off the shelf for your career because that's not, you can't like unfold a map. You know, like my dad used to do this
Like a
whenever we went on
blueprint.
holiday.
It doesn't work.
Yeah, yeah. You know, on holiday. Like, I mean, this
Aw,
shows my age. He used to like get out the map and he would, you know, like an ordnance survey
that's
map
very
with all like,
cute.
and he would open it all on whatever table of whatever cottage that we were staying in, and he would study this map for like hours. And it would, you know, he'd be like, well, you then follow this map. But I think now that's not going to help in our careers. It's not flexible enough. It doesn't give you enough freedom. Obviously, you kind of want to change direction. At the same time, I think if you say to people, and I had a go at this, and even though I like a blank piece of paper, this is hard. Draw your own map. Just get started with a blank piece of paper and try and kind of create your own career map. It actually feels really difficult. So my conclusion was, for mapping to be useful for our careers, we've got to give it a frame to make it useful. We've got to decide, well, what are we mapping? Like, why are we mapping this thing, and kind of how is that going to be helpful for us?
So mapping for your career, I'm paraphrasing you a little bit, but mapping for your career is a process that can help you create clarity and give you a sense of direction, but it requires a framework to make it easy to do.
Yeah. And I think one of the really important component parts of a map, like that makes them particularly helpful, is that they are visual. And we know that most of us connect with visuals in a different way to words or even what you're listening to right now or watching right now. So visuals kind of engages in kind of new and interesting ways. And actually, when you look at lots of examples of career maps, there's a real lack of visuals. So
Mm.
I was like looking for examples, and lots of them still look like staircases, which made me sad. Still look like ladders. Or there's just lots of copy. There's lots of text, and I was like, oh, that doesn't. The whole point of maps is that you're using kind of icons or images, or kind of you're bringing things to life, like in
I
a
think that's where I
different
find
way.
it hard. So I'm very open to learning from the like maps. I think I can map and create connections, but I think my preference is to use kind of word maps. If I was creating like a listening map to this episode, for example, I would probably be capturing quotes or insights or recommendations and then sort of joining dots, but it probably would be arrows and words. So I'm very open to learning an alternative approach because I think that is my default to mapping at the moment.
Well, arrows would be okay, but
Yeah.
words I think we should challenge ourselves on.
Okay. Well, challenge me.
So what we're going to do today, so Helen and I sort of had this reflection on maps. So we thought to turn this sort of borrowed brilliance from maps into something useful, we've created or come up with ideas for 5 maps that we think would be useful for your squiggly career. And I think this list is probably way, way longer than this, but this might be a good place to get started. And we're going to talk about each map, how you might visualize it, maybe even without words. And then actually we're going to have a go at doing these as well. So we'll be able to share these online and in the show notes so you can actually see them to take some inspiration from them. So map number 1 is an energy map. And if I was going to do this, I would do it daily for 1 week. So I think that feels realistic and it's a 2-minute task at the end of every day. And the way that I would make this visual is every day I get to the end of my work day, but you could do your whole day. And I would just ask myself when questions. When did I have the most energy today? And when did I have the least energy today? And the way that I would visualize this, I think, is I would use a battery, because I think that's when I think of energy, I think of a battery. And also you're always looking at a battery on your phone or on your laptop when I've usually not charged it enough. And I think I would then have a code. So green battery would be most energy, red battery would be least energy. And I think I would then kind of every day sort of have, and this is probably where I would use words, my green battery, and then I would write recording podcast with Helen, my high energy moment for the day. Red battery, I don't know, sorting out some admin that I'm meant to have done to run our company that I've not done probably. So I think if you had that every day and you were visually, the other thing you could do, see, I do like visuals, I might change the size of the battery. So, there's like your high energy moment. I think if I was like, wow, it was really high energy, I think I'd want my green battery to be bigger. And if I was like, yeah, it was my high energy moment, but it didn't feel. So I suppose I'm starting to do a bit of comparative mapping.
I think what I would do, I've got mine. So I would have a red battery and a green battery, like side by side. And anything towards the top of the green battery would be like high energy. So every day I'd write down what are my green energy, like my green battery things, and what are my red battery things. And then I would almost kind of rank them by how high they were.
You prioritize everything almost.
Yeah, how high they were against the red or the green battery would indicate how much energy they were giving or taking from me.
Oh, interesting.
Interesting how it's the same exercise, but we'd visualize it different. Yeah.
And also, I think that's the point. This is really playful. I think you can have a play with this. I think the point is just you're asking the when questions, and doing it when today is so much easier than if you try to do an energy map and you're just like, right, over the last month or over the last year, when have I had the most energy and the least energy? It's so hard. Our memories are patchy and inaccurate. Whereas if you're doing it for today, you're like, I can remember today. Even that usually takes a moment to just be like, well, what's everything that's kind of happened today? And then I think seeing that visual over a week, the point then is, and this is very good in the Language of Maps book, actually, they talk about data. What essentially maps do is they kind of give you data, but it takes a human to make meaning from that data. And so then once you've got that map, you can kind of turn that map into insights and those insights into action. I always think kind of that's the maps almost give you the awareness, and then you've got to keep asking yourself that so what now question. So how do I have more of those high energy moments? You can't usually get rid of the low energy moments, but you can maybe think about when you do them or who can help you. Can you do them faster? There's still usually changes you can make.
Do you think, I was just thinking, generally maps are understandable by other people, right? So you create a map. So do you think, if I did mine with my green and red batteries and my blah, 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 and I showed that to you, and I was like, oh, what do you think? Of my insights, not so much my mapping ability, but just the insights. Could you and I have a conversation? Is a map like a conduit to a conversation because it makes my thinking easier for you to understand?
Yeah. I suppose it gets things out of your head and makes it observable and something that you could also look at together. I think so. I'm just thinking about all of the different maps we're going to talk about. I think pretty much every one of these would be useful for a career conversation. Um, and sometimes I don't think they have to be. Sometimes you might just want to
Just for
do some of
you.
these things for your
Yeah.
own reasons. But all of these pretty much could also be team activities. You could all do the same activity for a week or the same map on a day. Be a good thing to do in a team day. When
Yeah.
you're always looking for stuff to do on a team day that's like fun and a bit different. We've done it before, like where you getting people drawing, I think in any way always gets people sort of almost because everyone worries about the drawing more than they do the content.
So true.
But it gets everybody sort of having a bit of fun. We often get people to draw the shape of their career so far at the start of a session when we're in a room with people. And that is essentially a map. That's like the shape of your kind of career so far, albeit probably not with enough detail to then be able to share with somebody. So that's our first map. So first map, energy map. Second map, the give gain map. So this is thinking a little bit about this idea of people helping people, which is how we talk about networking. And your give gain map is about arrows. So arrows work really well here. And this is something we have tried and tested quite a few times kind of over the years. The idea is you put yourself at the center of the map and you think about the people in your career that you support and who support you. So there might be some people where you've got an arrow going from you to them, so from me to Helen, and then from Helen back to me. And the sort of width of those arrows might feel exactly the same. So I'm like, well, I feel like I give as much to Helen as I gain from Helen. That would be true for me if I was putting Helen on my map. There might be other people on that map where I just give. I'm like, oh, I'm useful and I'm helpful, but I don't gain, and that's okay. Not every relationship needs to be equal. We don't give to gain. You sometimes just give because you're like, I can be useful. And then there might be some people where you think, oh, crikey, I gain a lot from those people. And maybe I give back a bit. So your arrow might be really narrow, but your give from them, that arrow might be really, really wide. And you think, well, they're really supporting me at the moment in my career. I know sometimes people think that's often the case with mentors, though often if you talk to a mentor, they'll be like, I learn just as much from them as they do from me. So it's always good kind of to challenge yourself on that one. But I guess what's interesting about this is often when you do this, it just helps you to reflect on your career community. Have you got the right people around you? Are you thinking about the give and gain? And is there anything that doesn't feel like it's quite balanced? So Helen and I were saying, we both remember when our first editor for the Squiggly career had a go at this exercise, it was a real aha moment for her because she realised that she was giving a lot, but actually she had hardly any arrows kind of coming to her because she was naturally someone who just, like wanted to be useful, wanted to give to other people, which is brilliant. Having that giving mindset, giving without keeping score, amazing. But also you do also need to, like look after yourself and your
Yeah.
own squiggly career.
There's another dimension as well that you can add into the map, which is the width of the arrows is how much support you are giving or
Yes.
gaining. And then the length of the arrows can help you to see the frequency. So, for example, if it's a very short arrow, that means it's happening, it's high frequency of support.
Yeah.
Whereas there's a very long arrow, maybe it's not happening very often. And when I've done this form of a map before, I've often seen that the help that I am giving to people is often very reactive. Like people are like, can you help
Can you
me
help
solve
me
this
now?
problem? I need you now. I'm getting a WhatsApp message and it's very, it's very like immediate, reactive, Helen. Whereas the help that I'm getting from other people is it's just less frequent. And it just made me think, like it's all looking one way for me. If I could move out those people to sort of less frequent, then maybe I could help them unpick some of the problems. Whereas because it's so frequent, all I'm doing is sort of solving it in that moment for them rather than saying, well, why don't we meet once a quarter, talk about your most significant challenges and try to get to the root causes. That would be a different way of supporting. But for a lot of people, I found that I was stuck in this sort of immediate support. So the third map that we think is useful is to do a form of skills mapping. And there are at least two, so as we talk about it, we might think through more. There are at least two dimensions to this skills map. So first of all, there are the skills that you want to stretch. And the second one are the skills that maybe you want to start to invest more in. So some might be quite established, and you might think, I might say, okay, one of my skills is presenting, because Sarah and I get to do a lot of that at work. But actually, what I want to think about is how I could stretch that further. And so the first part of this map, you could maybe draw icons. So, one of the ways that I could stretch that further is maybe I could create a how-to on presenting, because then I'm going to have to think through. We talked about this in the previous Borrowed Brilliance episode about Richard Feynman. I'd have to think through, well, how do I present in order to turn that into something that other people could learn from? Maybe one way I could stretch that strength is I could join a new course or be part of a new community who are presenting in different ways. I actually think there's a really good guy that I'm trying to connect with at the moment called Peps McRae, who talks about presenting very much like in academia, in teaching. And I could learn a
Oh,
lot from how he does it, like, because they really think about how they engage young people who are,
hmm.
distractible and all that kind of stuff. He would be somebody that I could put on if I want to get better at it. So you might have people, could have a little people icon. You could have like courses, maybe you have a little icon for kind of more formal learning, sharing, all that kind of stuff. So how do you stretch the strengths? And then you would have the skills that you, or the areas that you want to invest in. So these are more like starting. And these could be, little topics and things like that. So but this is where I need your help, Sarah, because I think what I would end up with here is sort of me in the middle, and I would have arrows and ideas. So it's a bit arrow and wordy. So if you have ideas about how to make it more visual, I'm very open to it.
Yeah, well, I was also thinking with skills, I wonder whether is it easier to start with one skill? So, rather than like skills, plural mapping, where you're like, well, I could do a bit of this and a bit of that. I was reflecting on when I ask people this question, which I do in workshops quite a lot. What's the one skill you want to learn or get better at, or one thing you want to learn? At the moment, everybody's answer is pretty much AI.
Yeah.
Some people go to other things like listening or empathy or whatever, but a lot of people say AI. And I wonder if you could do a skills map just on AI. And so you kind of start with AI at the center, and then you start to kind of ask yourself more specific questions. Because I think the problem with AI, it's a bit like saying, I want to learn marketing or I want to learn
Yeah.
finance. It's just too big. So I feel like you've got to break it down. And I'm wondering about one of the ideas that we had in You Coach You, that takes you back, was this idea of action its. And action its are a really good way of mapping a kind of big challenge and making it bite-sized, breaking it down so you can make some progress. Because I think you could look at AI at the moment and be like, overwhelmed, there's loads of stuff out there, but I don't know where to start. And then you don't actually end up doing anything. So I think if I was taking AI, I think this is where I would maybe use a Miro board or a mural board. Or if it was me, I'd probably use giant yellow post-it notes, let's be honest, because I love a giant yellow post-it note. And I almost wouldn't worry too much about, is this right or is this not? But I think I would try and just come up with as many actions. I'd try and map as many actions as I could. So to do, these are things that I could do. And then I think I would use my map as like a live visualization of moving from to do to done.
Okay.
Because we know that our brains love to visualize progress. We know that creates momentum for our learning. And I think that could work if you've got a skill where you feel a bit stuck and you just need to get started. I think maybe kind of going with like the action its. So I suppose my mapping here actually that's a bit more, it's very post-it note based.
Yeah.
But it is more words. That's more words
I
than
like
it is
how
kind of visuals.
the physical thing of you've got a map with like your learning list, the
A
action
map that
its, and
moves.
you've got that, and then that would help you see some momentum. As you were talking, just the version that I was talking about, which is definitely more, I
Mind
think,
mappy.
mind mappy, more like capturing what do I want to learn. One thing I think you probably could do with my version is you could do like map overlap. So if I did that as a team, if you gave a team 10 minutes
Yeah.
each to kind of map, what skills do you want to stretch, what skills do you want to start to invest more in, and you just give 10 minutes for people to kind of write all that down. I think you could then share your maps and see where you've got map overlap, and then I could be like, oh, you want to stretch that one too, let's do it
Do
together,
it
or you want
together.
to start to do that. And that could be, quite an interesting team. I think yours is really good for finding focus and very good for
Yeah.
seeing your progress in quite a sort of solo mapping
Yes.
process, whereas maybe this kind of slightly more broader learning map where my head went to with it is a good kind of team exercise.
Yeah. What's also really nice about the team one is, you can borrow brilliance from each other, and you can see what other people have, and you that's fine. You could be like, oh, Helen's come up with something I hadn't thought of. Actually, I really want to learn that too. Yeah, and sometimes you just get inspired, versus I think mine is better if you already know the skill you want to learn. Then you can start to kind of break it down.
So our fourth map is to do some career possibility mapping. And this is something that we have used for years in our sessions. We wrote about it in the Squiggly career. And we also talked about it recently on our Squiggly Skills times AI sprint, because this is one that I think AI can help you visualize. And Sarah said, oh, it's not brilliant at mapping. Probably could be better, but it is actually one that you can use it to create maps. So the point of a career possibility map is to help you to see your development from different directions, because lots of people get sort of stuck in their career because they kind of can't see what they can be. So we're trying to encourage a little bit of curiosity here and use possibility mapping as a way to do that. So we just recommend starting with 4 potential possibilities. So there's the obvious possibility, there's the ambitious one, something interesting but a bit out of reach. There's a pivot possibility, sort of you using your talents in new ways rather than just over relying on what your job title says you can do. And then there's your dream possibility, which is the very unconstrained, if you could do anything possibility. And you could just make some notes and see where the energy is, like see where I've got the most ideas, see which one of those possibilities is most appealing. Or you could put this as a prompt into whatever AI tool that you like, and it will create a map for you. And we had loads of people share on social the maps that AI had created for them. So what we'll do in case you kind of want to experiment a little bit with AI on this particular map, we create a pod sheet for every episode. So we'll do one for this. You can get it from our website, amazingif.com, and we'll just cut and paste the prompt that we used in our AI sprint so that you can try that out if you want to just see what it could generate. You could also contrast and compare, right? So you could use that prompt, you could do one just with your own thoughts, and just see if it's identified anything you hadn't thought of or how similar they are. It could be quite a useful learning exercise.
And just as a reminder, if you're like, oh, what's a skill sprint? You can go back and do all of that for free. You can do any of our previous skill sprints for free. So they're just always there if you need them. So if you want to go back and do the whole of the AI sprint, it's only 5 days, probably takes you 10-15 minutes a day. So check that out if that just feels useful. Our final map for the day is, it sounds a bit negative to finish with this, but actually we tested this one beforehand, so we know this is useful. So this is problem mapping. And I think this happens every week at work. I think every week at work there's a new problem or a recurring problem or something that you just keep saying. It's a familiar frustration. So Helen and I were saying today, we were like, we keep saying the same phrase. I was like, Helen says this to me most days at the moment, and I think I say it every other day just to kind of keep topping it up. We keep saying, we're holding loads of stuff in our head, and we're not saying it in a positive way. We're saying it in a it's feeling frustrating, etc. So we were like, right, how could you use a map to sort of make sense of that problem so that you're not just going around in circles, you're actually doing something about it? So our idea here is to do a facts versus feelings map, just to see kind of what you notice, like what do you learn from doing that? And I think you could come up with icons here. I think your facts could have like a fact, like a key, like you get a key to a map. That could be one, and then kind of feelings could be another one. And so Helen, if we were doing this, let's just have a go quickly, check it works. So we did do a little check on this one. We're holding loads of stuff in our heads. Give me 3 feelings, at least 3 feelings.
Overwhelm, worry, tired.
Okay, great. I was like, it's not going to be negative, but then you're like, I'm tired and I'm overwhelmed. But what do we know about feelings? Name them to tame them. So actually, by saying them out loud, that is even a good thing. And so, when we do talk about mapping, I do wonder whether, you could create your map live with someone else. And this might be one where it is particularly useful to do it with someone if you've got a shared frustration. So I'm like, maybe you're creating that map and one of you's creating icons or writing it down and it's kind of a shared map. So there's some feelings, 3 feelings. You could probably keep going, but let's limit it to 3 for today.
Okay, yeah.
And can you give me 3 facts? So we're sort of being balanced with our map here.
3 facts. I mean, I could... I haven't done, but I could factually count the number of messages, and I could use data on Teams using Copilot or something.
Yeah.
I think my overwhelmed feeling would be backed up by the fact that in the last month, I reckon it's at least 50% more messaging going on. So, but
Yep.
I could get that as a fact point to see whether that is
Good idea.
true or not. So that'd be one. I think there are more messages flying about. Fact number two, there are more people in our team.
Hmm.
So there are more people who are working on things, which is sort of creating more conversations and probably has a relationship. So fact number two with the messages. So more people, more messages. And I think that there are like more high priority projects. I mean, we are launching a book in the next 4 months, and I think that doesn't happen very often. And that is, factually, that is a very big project, and we've added that on to what is already a growing business. So they'd be my three facts: more messages, I would need to get the data to support it; more people, that's factually true; and one very big project that is launching in 4 months' time.
And that's an add-on versus,
Hmm.
it's like it's adding on to everything else. And so, having just talked that through, what do you think you then do with that map? Like, so part of it, I think part of the usefulness is generally we know that writing creates clarity. So I think that you probably just created a bit of clarity for yourself, and like almost like rather than thinking about in your head that you're holding lots of stuff in your head, you're like, okay, you've got it down, you've kind of mapped out this problem in a way, and they're both valid, right? The facts are valid and the feelings are kind of valid. I'm then just wondering the kind of this, if that's the what and the so what, you kind of need to get to a now what, I think, with problems, because otherwise the problem just sort of sticks around.
Yes. Yeah, 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 yeah. Like what's happening, which is like the facts. So what is the more like the feelings, and then now
Yeah.
what is like what you're going to do. I actually think my first reflection on it is to stop beating myself up, because
Yeah.
like,
Okay.
why am I so tired? Why am I so overwhelmed? This is not me.
That's
You're
why.
like, oh, that would be why. That is factually that's factually why. So you stop beating yourself up a little bit. I also think you do naturally move into, okay, it's much easier to go into now what, and I kind of go, okay, so now what? How do we reduce communications, or how do I set more expectations about when I'm going to reply to them because it's not working? I almost want to go for each one of those things. Well, now what? Okay, now what? There are more people. Okay, so are we going to change how we're doing meetings? Are we going to change who is helping who, so that things, or just create new roles and relationships, or micro teams or something? I kind of want to fix it by doing that. And then on the other one, the one big project, I kind of go, well, okay, well, now what are you going to stop? Because this is not going to get any better for the next 4 months.
Yeah.
So now what are you going to stop? And I think it does, mapping it in that way does mean it is easier to solve some of those problems, I think.
Yeah. So I think you've gone very practical. I think I went to experiments.
Hmm.
So one of the ways to almost explore problems is to design experiments. And I think I think we are getting better at doing that. I think we have done that so much more this year. And
Agreed.
if I think about that sort of, like rather than trying to solve everything forever, being like, right,
Yeah.
we've got too many messages, we need a whole rewire and a whole rethink, which is often quite unrealistic. And it's unrealistic to do quickly, because often you're like, well, these are problems right here, right now. So I can't, because you know what I ideally want to do. I'm like, I want to sit in a room all day and luxuriate in this problem. And I think if we did that, we would come up with some really good stuff. And I don't know, you probably that'd be a kind of a nice thing to do. But I don't think you and I have a single day between now and the book coming out where we could do that. Like
No
realistically,
luxuriating.
I actually don't think we do. So there's no luxuriating available. Instead, what you can do, you
Great.
can do easy everyday experiments. You can do small experiments. So one of the things that we are doing, probably based on this a little bit, is we've sort of stopped one-to-ones in a more traditional way. And I think part of the reason that we are experimenting with that is to try and make sure that everybody asks everybody across the team, like, who can help, rather than it always being like, Helen can help. Because you are naturally like, well, Helen can help. Like, there's very few things where Helen couldn't help because she'll fix it. But I think we are trying to reduce the dependency on that and going, well, who else? And also, you don't have the capacity to just have lots and lots of one-to-ones, because we now, fact, have more people in the team. So if you had one-to-ones with everyone, you'd be like, well, that would be all of your day. So, like those kind of small things, I think I can imagine in my map, I'm almost now, I want to to fold a bit of paper in half, and on one half I've got the problems with the facts and the feelings, and then on the other half I want to draw an experiment icon. I want to draw experimenting, and then I want to come up with 3 experiments. What happens if, people do messaging where they just do, oh, we have like moments where we don't message. So there are no messages between, I don't know, 8 and 10 a.m. so that everyone can start their day with Headspace. Or I'm trying to imagine us ever doing that, but let's imagine, those kind of things. I think you get to some quite interesting things to explore when you connect the dots between problems and experiments. I'm really into this. I really like mapping.
I think for this, because we mentioned quite a few maps, I think the best thing to do is to think about what map is most useful for you right now. Is it, is actually the problem mapping useful because there's something that's really getting in the way or frustrating you? Is actually a possibilities map quite useful for you? Do you think, I've never really thought about the energy gains and drains, or do you feel a bit isolated? You might need some support. Because I think they're all really useful. And as we said, we'll create our versions of these and we'll share them on social so you can see them. But I think don't be limited by how we visualize them.
No.
Think if a key doesn't resonate or a battery doesn't resonate for you on the energy map, then use your own icons. But I think pick the map that feels most useful for you right now. Just give it a go and reflect on how has it created clarity for you. I think that's the point of this.
So that's everything for this week. We hope you're enjoying the kind of slightly new format for the Squiggly Careers podcast. As a reminder, on Tuesdays, we always borrow brilliance from somewhere, someone, or today, an object.
Something.
But we are still trying to make them really useful. So let us know if we're kind of delivering on that promise for you. And then on a Thursday, you can listen to the Squiggly shortcuts. So these are 5-minute episodes on a very specific topic. They're all new. They're probably topics we have covered in the past, but we've covered them for half an hour, like how to get a pay rise. I just recorded one yesterday on pay rises, but in 5 minutes. If you do 3 things to help you with getting a pay rise, what are they? What would you do? So if that one feels useful for you, maybe go and have a look at that one. So we release those every Thursday. So hopefully you're getting a good mix of curiosity and exploring and getting smarter for your squiggly career, and then being incredibly practical on the Thursday.
And we have a back catalogue of over 500 episodes, so you can find those on amazingif.com. And if you sign up for Squiggly Careers in Action, we'll send you all the links you need to learn each week to your inbox. So the details for that are in the show notes.
But that's everything for this week. Thank you as always for listening, for reviewing, rating, subscribing. That all makes a massive difference to our ability to do what we do. So thank you for that. And we'll be back with you again next week. Bye for now.
Bye, everyone.